You know, there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're Del and Debbie's Mind, Body, and Soul and everything in between. We're the show that talks about how to live your best life, and we interview guests that have will inspire all of us. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Debi Carlin Boyle. I am a certified wellness and nutrition coach, a fitness instructor, and a personal trainer. And my co-host right here...
Hi, I'm Del A.D. Jones. I'm a transformational life coach specializing in personal growth, relationships, and divorce recovery. And on our show today, I wish we had 2 hours or 3 or 4 even actually. We have a fascinating show. We're going to hear all about the harrowing real-life story of one person's journey of survival. A childhood marred by physical and sexual abuse, to a life-threatening battle with addiction, and finally, thank goodness, to an inspirational life full of love and healing. So we're so honored today to have as our very special guest, Khalil Rafati. He is a wellness entrepreneur, owner of Sun Life Organics, an athlete, and author of I Forgot to Die. So welcome to Khalil, and thank you so much for coming here today.
Welcome.
Yay.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you.
And to get started, we want to hear your very beginnings. We want to hear your story. I think you grew up in Ohio.
I did.
Let's start from the beginning because our audience wants to hear how your journey has began and how you got to where you're at today.
Okay, sure. Both my parents were immigrants. My mother came from Poland, and my father came from Palestine. They both spoke different languages and had different religions. It was pretty...
Your mother was Jewish and your father Muslim, is that right? Oh.
My mother was Jewish by birth, but she was adopted into a Catholic family.
Oh.
And my father was Muslim by birth, but was an atheist, or is an atheist. And... and everyone where I lived looked like the cast of the Brady Bunch. So, I mean, it was blonde hair, blue eyes, mom, dad, dog, cat, dinner at 6. And then there was us. And I was brown and had weird parents and that did weird things. And there was a lot of, it was confusing. There was a lot of violence and neglect, because when she was a child, her father died at sea fighting the Nazis, and then her mother abandoned her on someone's doorstep. When my father was a child, the United Nations decided that the land that he was living on, which was called Palestine, was going to go back to the Jewish people. So my father then became a refugee in his own land, went from living on an olive orchard to living in tents, and eventually became a Jordanian citizen. So the Jordanian government sort of adopted a bunch of the Palestinians at the time, and a lot of anger on his side, and a lot of neglect and abuse on my mother's side. So she internalized and was kind of frail, and I don't want to say weak because she's not weak. She's incredibly resilient. She survived being in a work camp. She survived, being abandoned like that. She survived my father.
Yeah. But that initial abandonment is scarring for life.
Yeah.
For life, yeah.
I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
Comes out in a lot of ways.
She went through, both of them, to be fair, both of them went through awful, awful stuff when they were kids. So neither of them were prepared to be parents. And
how old were they when you were born?
I should know that, but I mean, they're in their 80s now, and I'm 47, so...
So they were not...
They weren't young.
Yeah, they weren't teenagers.
No, they weren't. She had a previous marriage, which I don't know anything about, other than she had a son in that previous marriage. He had many marriages, which I don't really know about any of them except for one. I met a woman in Chicago that he was married to, that he had some kids with.
So you have half brothers and sisters
Do you?
All over the world.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was just going to say.
Yeah, all over the world.
Are you in contact with them?
No.
No, not okay.
No.
And what about with both your parents? Do you have any siblings?
No, I'm the
you're
only
an only child.
Yeah,
Okay.
with them.
So
yeah.
being in Ohio as an only child and not being white skinned, blue eyed, and blonde hair, were you bullied?
I wasn't bullied. I mean, I was called sand nigger regularly.
Oh, well, that's
That's-
a little bit of form of bullying.
Yeah, I don't think the kids. I don't think they meant it.
harm.
You know, I really believe, like, growing up in Ohio, there was lots of things that we would consider horrible that were said. Things, you know, like, get your cotton picking hands off of that. We didn't know what that meant.
Right.
Yes,
I didn't.
exactly.
I got to be honest with you. I didn't know what that meant until a few years ago.
Do you know what? As you said that, I
It's
just
horrible.
had to rationalize
Yeah.
it. I've never
Yeah,
put
it means
that.
get your
Yeah.
black
Yes.
hands off.
Yeah,
of
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't-
Absolutely. It's a total racist
Yeah.
statement.
Wow.
Even Jewish people in Ohio would say things like, "Yeah, he tried to Jew me out of it." Now, Ohio, you said that stuff, but you didn't mean it.
Yeah.
California,
You say
you don't
it.
say that stuff, but you think
but
it.
you
Yeah,
think
you
it,
think
right.
it. Well, and when you do say it, you mean it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it kind
So
of, yeah.
rough childhood. I mean, I don't want to wallow in a pity party because my life is so incredible right now. I'm living a life beyond my wildest dreams. But it's for people to understand, because I hear it all the time, like, oh my God, how could you be a junkie? How could you stick a needle in your arm? I'm scared of needles. Everyone's scared of needles. I don't get how people don't understand that. Like,
Yeah.
it used to take 3 nurses to hold me down to draw my blood. I was terrified of needles. But if you're in enough pain, and if
Yeah.
your childhood, if you suffer enough trauma in your childhood, and your anxiety and your fear gets large enough, you're going to do whatever you can
takes
do
To self-soothe,
to
to
self-medicate,
medicate.
to
Yeah.
anesthetize
Numb it.
yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
bad childhood.
So
Yeah.
so what brought you out of Ohio and let's
Well, actually, before we go
back.
there,
Yeah.
because I read your book,
Yeah.
which is, as I say, it's a harrowing tale.
Yeah.
I think I had my heart in my chest. I kept saying, "Please, God, make this the last time." I don't think I
well,
can
you
go.
knew the outcome.
I don't think I can go through this again. But there is some more in and around Ohio that I wanted to
Oh,
touch upon before we get to coming
Sure.
to California. You mentioned that your brother had, your mother had a child,
Yeah.
your half brother, who was 8 years older than you. Is that
Yes.
correct? And so, talk a little bit about that, because I'm not sure if I'm sure you would agree with me, but I think if you ask most people that have issues or struggles around addiction, the percentage of those people that have suffered abuse, whether it's sexual or physical abuse, is huge. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, and it's only now just starting to be talked about. I
Yeah.
mean, when I used to share in meetings, because I always share about the sexual abuse, because I don't think it's taboo. I think you're only as sick as your secrets,
absolutely.
right? So
That's
Yeah.
absolutely.
I had an older half sibling who was put into an orphanage because my father didn't want him around because it wasn't his kid. I'm guessing some pretty bad things were done. I'm not guessing. I know bad things were done to him in that orphanage because it was
Yeah.
eventually shut down. He got out, and there I was, and he continued the pattern. I believe what they did to him is what he did to me.
So
And
he lived
also-
with you.
Well, when he came back.
When he came back from
Yeah.
the orphanage, yeah.
Okay.
So when I was about 5, I think he came back,
And
And
he's
also-
8 years older, so he
Yeah.
was a
yeah,
preteen.
he was going through
Yeah.
puberty. I'm
And probably rage. I mean, he probably had some feelings about you. Like,
Of
why
course.
weren't you given away? Why was
course.
he given away and put in an orphanage? If it
Yeah.
hadn't have been for your mother and you coming along, he
Yeah.
might have stayed. So it's complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated, and I think also because later in life, I mean, I have no contact with him now, but later in life, he did end up being gay, and so I think also he was going through puberty. And I'm not making excuses for
No,
him. You don't
exactly.
touch it. You don't touch a child.
Yeah.
I don't care. Like, there's no gray area there.
No.
You. I
Agree
mean, if you're in the south of
wholeheartedly.
if you're in the south of France and you're at the beach and there's women in bikinis, you're not checking IDs, and maybe one that's 16 who looks like she's 25. Like, there's a gray area there.
Yeah.
When it's a child,
You
4,
know.
5, 6 years old, 10 years old, you don't touch them.
No.
So I'm not making excuses, but at the same time, I don't have resentment because I understand that it's a cycle, but it's a cycle that I choose to end.
Yeah,
It's a
absolutely.
cycle that I choose to to put an end to by discussing it and talking about it.
Bringing awareness to it.
Yeah,
And also, I mean, God, just the modeling of not having any shame around it, because it's not our shame.
Yeah.
I mean, if something happened to us as children, it's not our shame.
Right.
I mean, that's been put upon us by adults that acted inappropriately.
For sure.
So I think that's wonderful that you are putting a beautiful face to that and just saying, hey, talk about it.
Yeah.
And be aware of it. And people say things like, oh, it happens more now. It didn't. It happened, I think, probably all the time.
Yeah.
It just wasn't
It's
talked
just
about.
more talked about
Yeah,
now. It
yeah.
was literally taboo.
Well,
Literally.
I mean, I talk about it pretty extensively in my book, but when I went to my mom and I said, please make him stop, she literally pushed me away and said, he's just tickling you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, where do you think she learned that?
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
So-
right.
To
What was
minimize-
familiar to
Yeah,
her.
and so
the
then
denial.
I was taught in that moment then just to, close your eyes and pretend it's not happening. So then when it happened again and again, in a much more damaging way, because then my swim coach, who worked at the local country club, he was molesting me, and he was like my hero. I mean, he was like somebody that I really, really looked up to.
Yeah.
And I'm a little boy, and I'm desperate for attention. I'm desperate for
Yeah.
love, and he's being inappropriate, and I'm kind of pretending it's not happening or making excuses for it. And then he, in a very predatory way, invited me to go camping with him. And I said, at first I was like, no, 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 and then eventually, my mom, not knowing any better, was like, no, this is great,
Oh,
go. And
geez.
so yeah,
Enabler.
Well, and it's
That's
also
tough.
they're so predatory, and the grooming and the
Yeah.
becoming the father figure or
Yeah.
the big brother or whatever. It's just so
yeah,
insidious.
it's horrible.
But I hear you. I mean, I remember saying something to my mother once, and her response, God bless her, I love her to death. But again, the same thing. It was like, oh, that happened to me, and it's like, hello.
Yeah.
So that's it. It's supposed to keep happening
Right.
because it happened to you. It's sort of normal. It's not normal.
Yeah.
And it's really. So let's go
Yes.
into your teens then. I mean,
How
that
did
obviously
you-
affected your behavior.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
talk a little
I-
bit about.
I started getting into drugs and alcohol at a very early age, hanging out with all the older kids, the quote unquote cool kids, smoking pot when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, drinking when I was 12, 13, blackout drunk, just drinking myself blind, trying to contend with that shame. That last sexual abuse incident happened when I was 11, about 11 and a half years old.
Aye.
And that scarred me. I mean, for decades. That was something that I could not forgive, and I could not pretend didn't happen, because it did.
Did you feel in any way responsible?
With the swim
Well,
coach?
that you
Yes.
brought it on.
No.
That you.
Well, thank goodness,
Good,
because that
yeah.
can
A lot of
often.
people take on guilt that it was
Yeah.
their fault that
No, I
they
wanted- I
created
wa-
the situation.
No, in my early childhood, it was more confusing, and maybe there was some feelings of, well, maybe I brought some of that on my own. But in that particular situation, no, I wanted to kill
You
him.
knew. Oh,
That's
you did.
great. That's
Good.
health- that's actually
that's
healthy.
Towards
Yeah.
knowing.
I mean, I know that I, for years, made number one, wouldn't call something what it was.
Yeah,
And then felt that I had been responsible, because you're told you're responsible.
Yeah.
If you weren't so cute, it wouldn't have happened. If you
Sure.
hadn't have, whatever, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And so therefore, the fact that at 11 you had such a sense of awareness to know that it wasn't you
Yeah.
and that they were in the wrong. But then again, that's when it leads to the anger.
yeah.
The anger.
I was mad, and then started acting out, and I started having sex when I was 12 years old, drinking, as I said, smoking pot, shoplifting, vandalism, all those things that sort of go hand in hand with a child that, on the outside, I was a good-looking kid, fit, physically fit, capable, athletic, but I was so tortured on the inside.
Yeah.
And
You were trying to numb that and
Yeah.
make that go away.
Yeah.
And drugs and alcohol definitely give you that feeling that it's suppressing everything.
sure.
And,
And then-
you
and-
don't know better.
And then the people that I chose to also to hang out with were, sort of like outlaw, gangster type of people. The people that I surrounded myself with were much, much older than me, and people that I talk about this guy Tommy in my book. Tommy was just a total like James Dean, rebel without a cause type of guy, and he ended up falling off a ladder. and dying, which was another incredibly traumatic thing that happened.
This happened when you were
While
young?
you were still living in Ohio and still young.
Yeah, when I was a little kid. And he was like, I really, really trusted him. I really looked up to him. So, yeah, the one kid, Greg, who protected me from my brother, he died of open heart surgery.
Oh, no.
And then Tommy, who worked at the country club, he ended up falling off a ladder. So, by the time I was 12, 13, 14 years old, I really felt that the world was an evil, bad, hostile place.
Well, that's
don't
all
blame
you
you.
had seen until
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
Really?
didn't doubt the existence of God. I just thought that God was a bad thing.
Right.
Like, how could this thing,
Yeah.
Yeah,
these people are like praying to this thing that's allowing all this
All this
bad
bad-
stuff to
exactly.
happen
Right.
to me.
How-
And it's like,
I don't get it.
God gave us life and God gives us free will, but I don't think God causes cancer or Hitler.
But you don't
or-
know that as a child. I mean, you just
No.
know what you're being. So just to digress for a second, now
Sure.
you say your father was an atheist. Did he actually, did he vocalize that when you were younger, or is that something you got to know later?
He cussed a lot, he sweared a lot, he broke a lot of things, and he was pretty violent.
So he was angry.
I'm sure there was talk of, the goddamn Catholics are idiots, or the Jews or the Arabs. My dad didn't discriminate against anybody.
Yeah.
Hated
He
everybody.
just had an attitude. He was Archie Bunker
Yes.
in.
He was, yeah,
yeah.
in a way. And look, I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for my father.
Absolutely.
I mean, my father is now 83 years old, and like you could come at him with a baseball bat and he would just stand there. I mean, he's one of the most strong, resilient, determined men I've ever met in my life, and I derive a lot of my strength and who I am from him and his ability to overcome just about anything. I just know that happiness is a choice, and I choose to be happy. And although I
Love it.
don't speak with him, we text sometimes, like if it's his birthday or something like that. We will text, but I chose about 3 years ago to not communicate with him. And again, not because he's a bad person, but it makes me feel bad.
affects you.
Yeah, it makes me
Yes.
feel bad. And here's the unfortunate truth. My dad doesn't like me. He just doesn't like me.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. He's not obligated to like me. I'm a pain in the ass. And I put him
You
through
put him through
hell.
some stuff.
Yeah, and I know that he, in whatever way, whatever weird way, I know that he loves me and he wants the best for me. Maybe I remind him of my mom too much. I'm not
Yeah.
quite sure.
Yeah.
But he just doesn't like me, and so
Right.
I don't want to talk to somebody that doesn't like me. And my mom I talk to all the time, and my mother. So both of my parents acted in different ways, because I had this plan. I was going to make a bunch of money. I was going to spoil the crap out of them, and then they were going to love me. And my mom's pretty good at that. My dad wasn't so good. So
Well.
Talk about before you moved out to California. I love the story about how you decided to actually come out here.
And how old were you at the time?
Well, the first time
And
I was
why?
17, and it was just for a couple of days. But I got a taste. I saw the models. I saw,
The
Hollywood.
weather.
Yeah, the weather. Yeah,
The
exactly.
beach, yeah.
And I made a vow to come back. So 4 years later, I had been talking about it. I was blind drunk one night up in Detroit, and I jumped up on a car. I was doing my best imitation of Jim Morrison, I'm sure. And I was yelling at my friends saying, you're all going to die here. You're all going to die in this shitty little town, and you're going to end up working in the factories just like your parents. And they're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm going to California. And they're like, bullshit.
Oh, so
And
they
I'm
dared
like, no.
you.
Oh, they shamed me because
Yeah.
I said, no, I'm moving to California. And they said, bullshit. You've been talking about that for 4 years. And they were right. And I said, well, I'm leaving tomorrow. And they said, bullshit. And I had so much false pride at the time, and I was so insecure that I woke up the next morning. I don't know how I got back to my mother's apartment, but I woke up in my mother's apartment on the sofa, and I was just like, oh my God, I gotta go. I just grabbed
Divine intervention here, don't you think?
Grab my belongings, and then I started to panic, and then I started to backpedal, and then I started to think, well, I'll drive to my dad's restaurant because he gets there every day at 5, and I'm sure he's gonna flip out, scream at me, maybe pull me out of the car, slap me around. So I propped everything up in my windows so it looked like I was moving somewhere, and I sat there waiting in his parking lot, and you know, just like always, here comes his Mercedes. He pulls into his restaurant. He gets out of the car. And he walks right past me, and I rolled down my window. I'm like, "Dad," and he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "I'm moving to California," and he just turned around. And he goes, "Good luck," and he walked inside. So yeah.
So off you drove?
Off I drove with $840 to my name.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay, what happened then? I gotta know about that.
I love the bit about you said it was like you were caffeine fueled and cried for most of the drive.
Oh my God, I
Because you were
sobbed.
scared. You
Yeah.
were, yeah.
Yeah.
But something was compelling you. You knew deep down you belonged out in California.
I did.
Because there was something, there was a new life for you out there. But you didn't know it at the time. But you were compelled.
I didn't know it, but I did know
yes, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was so deep.
And the first half of the journey, it was you know, a horrible crying. It was crying like, oh my God, what have I done? And just, you know, like I can't turn around. What do I do? And then the second half, once I got into those longer states, you know, where it takes like 5 hours to drive across them, I literally became like hypnotized by the lines in the road because it was just me, and the radio station stops working, and I'm just driving and I'm driving.
And
with
have
your thoughts?
well, I was just going to say,
Yeah.
with your thought, because you have no idea what's at the end of that, you know, that road, because you
I didn't have a map.
plan, you
I
didn't
didn't
have
have
a
a map.
map, you didn't have people.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
when I
amazing.
made it to I think it was the 40. I took the 70, 80, I think to the 40, and when I made it to the 40, there was somebody that had California plates. And I asked them, I said, "Where are you guys going?" And they said, we're driving back to LA. I met them at like a Stuckey's diner. And I said, "Can I follow you?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." It was like some college kids from USC.
Yeah.
And so I followed them the rest of the way. I had no map. I knew I had to get out of Ohio or I was going to end up dead or in jail, because I was really starting to act out more and more and more as my teens turned into my 20s. And yeah, and then I came out here, and then it was just, you know, it was like a Fellini film. I mean, it was really like I left to get away from the trouble, and at first it worked. Like at first, like I had that Ohio thing in me where like I was willing to work. I went door to door with a bucket and a chamois and a towel, and I like knocked on people's doors and asked
What
them.
year was this again?
92.
92, okay.
Yeah. And I would ask them if I could wash their cars, and got a lot of doors slammed in my face, but there was also a lot of people that were like, "What?" And I'm like, well, "Can I wash your car for $40, or can I wax your car?" And they would like invite me in, they would make me lunch. They
lovely.
would, yeah, it was really, really cool. And eventually I lucked out at the Porsche Audi dealership in Santa Monica on 11th Street. I lucked out, and some guy like thought I had a detailing shop because he asked me if I had a place, and I'm like, "Of course I have a place." And he's like, "Well, what's the address?" And I'm like, "What's wrong with this guy?" And I'm like, "It's in the Santa Monica Canyon." He's like, "Oh, I've never seen it." I'm like, "What a weirdo! Why would he see my apartment?"
Yeah.
But
he was
let
talking
me,
about your business.
I didn't know, and he let
Well, your
me.
business was your,
So he let me
That's
take
funny.
one of the Porsches home, and I detailed it, and I brought it back, and then he let me take another one, and then eventually he referred me to BMW of Santa Monica on I think 16th in Santa Monica, and the guy there said, "Are you mobile?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "We have a client up in Bel Air. They don't live there anymore, so I can just say it was up,
Yes.
up at 700 Nemes in Bel Air."
I was at that house.
You were? Okay,
Yes.
so went up there.
I don't know this house.
And I was working there for about a month, and I talk a lot about this in the book because it was very bizarre because everyone there was gay except for me, and I was scared that they were going to figure out that I wasn't gay, so I just didn't talk. I just worked. And about a month into it, they had me up all the time, and they paid me an obscene amount of money. And one day the front door opened, which it never did, and out came this little white dog, and here comes Elizabeth Taylor, and I'm just like, "You've got
that's
to be
the house.
kidding me!" Like, oh my God.
That's whose cars you were. Oh,
And I didn't know.
wow,
Yeah.
Wow.
So left Ohio to get away from trouble, did really well for a while, created an incredible.
How long was a while? Years?
I mean, years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I when I drank, I would drink to blackout, so I avoided drinking to the best of my ability. But eventually, yeah, I got mixed up with the wrong crowd again. I was very industrious and resourceful, so people would say, not Elizabeth Taylor, but I mean, people that I was like hanging out with or working with, like, hey, can you get this? Can you get that? And it was a lot easier to drive to Marin County and buy a couple pounds of weed for, you know, $2,500 or $4,500, whatever, depending on the quality. Well, make a profit. I mean, I made thousands and thousands of dollars. By the time I got back to Malibu, it was gone. I mean, I could break it up into ounces or quarter pounds and make thousands and thousands of dollars. So
why not?
Yeah, I started to head into the wrong direction, got into a rock and roll band, and
so do you play an instrument or you sing?
I sang.
You sing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I sang, and I was with some really, really talented musicians, but many of them were kind of living off of second-generation fame, where they were like scions of rock, I think they call it. And they had the money and they had the habits that go along with that. And I got sucked right into it. The difference between me and many of those people that we hung out with.
You had the work ethic.
I had the work ethic, but I also had the ism. So they could take a handful of pills or do cocaine and party with the models and then go home and go to bed. I would, 3 days later, still be awake, like crawling on the floor looking for, you know.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had the
It's
thing.
intense. Yes, I didn't read your book, as maybe many of our viewers didn't either. So you know where everything's going. I don't. So this is a really good. We're balancing each other here and getting your story.
Yeah, it's a wild ride.
This is a roller coaster of emotions to see what you've gone through.
Yeah, and a lot of
resilience.
a lot of broken relationships with some really, really incredible women, because I just didn't have the emotional maturity to be honest with them. And again,
and you had the substance abuse too, which were, unless they were at your level of substance abuse.
Some of them were, some of them weren't. But the rage inside of me and the fear of them, the fear of them leaving me superseded any feelings I had towards, like, maybe I shouldn't say this, or maybe I shouldn't behave like that, or maybe I shouldn't cheat. Like, I knew wrong from right for the most part, but
we all do.
But I just would act out. And
we all know wrong from right, and we do things for various reasons that mostly have to do with our past and mostly have to do with what's familiar to us and how
our thinking. I mean, what we make of things and what we tell ourselves. I mean, it's
process.
There's so much power in that. I think some people don't realize how much power is in that.
Well, you could take something as simple as diet and knowing that you're 40 pounds overweight and you're still eating French fries and burgers, and what it's doing. I mean, we all know nowadays what that's doing. You're not going to lose the 40 pounds doing that, but the habit and knowing the difference between, it's, yes, there's an addictive to junk food. There is a whole addictive process, but it's just, we all know wrong from right. We know when we're doing something illegal, it's wrong, but that doesn't mean is so different. That urge that, it's coming from the inside. That's so deep.
Yeah. I mean, speaking for myself, I mean, maybe I can speak for other people, but I mean, our whole life is about avoiding pain and gaining
Absolutely.
pleasure, right?
That's right.
So whether it's a Coca-Cola or ice cream or cocaine and heroin. It's the same mechanism. It's our midbrain. It's our pleasure center, right? With the alcohol and the drugs, then you're freezing your prefrontal cortex, so you really lose the ability to make a choice. Not like right now, I can choose not to eat pizza tonight and not eat ice cream at 11:30 before I go to bed because I'm not drunk or high, right? But if I do eat pizza tonight, and if I do eat ice cream at 11:30 at night, guess what I'm going to want tomorrow? And guess what I'm going to want tomorrow night? And it's the same thing, because I'm teaching my midbrain and my pleasure center.
Well, it's the reward.
That's the reward.
Right. So the Pavlovian response just starts all over.
It's the habit. I mean, what it is. Our brains are trained to be habitual. It's that, as you say, stimulus response,
Yes.
and every time you give in to that urge, every time that the craving or the urge, you just strengthen that connection.
Right.
And it's
it
easier to
becomes
go that
harder.
way, as you were saying, than it is to take the steps that it takes to go back and start over and get rid of going that way.
Well,
and that's very difficult.
But here's the crazy thing. So with the drugs and alcohol, it's just a little bit more intense. So let's say you can get violently hungover from drinking or violently nauseous from drinking, and you're probably not going to drink for a while. Some people never drink again. With the food, it's much more insidious because it's so gradual and it's legal, and there's no one shaming you.
You have to do it.
And you have to eat.
You have to eat.
You have to
There's a
eat.
big
It's our fuel. It's our life. It's
and so what ends up happening, you eat a lot of carbs, you crave carbs. Eating carbs causes you to crave carbs, just like doing cocaine causes you to crave cocaine. So, but in my particular situation, so now I'm hanging out with the cool crowd, the fast crowd, I'm making music. But what ends up happening in the process of procuring all of the drugs and the lifestyle is you stop showing up at work. You stop following through with commitments. You stop returning phone calls. All of a sudden, the cell phone's turned off because you didn't pay the bill. Not because you didn't have the money, but just because you're an idiot. Yeah. And it starts to create this just whirlpool of a mess, or maybe a better analogy, snowball. Yeah. So now I'm a snowball going down the mountain and not paying my bills. I'm cheating on my girlfriend. I'm selling drugs on the side. Now I'm acting out in this way.
Wow.
This is our first break. It's our commercial break. No, you're not done. We have a whole half hour left.
Okay, cool.
I know you're going to. Yeah, no, we're not done here, boy.
This is fascinating, but I really want to go through the story chronologically, so we're going to take a 2-minute break. We will be back, and I want to pick up where you are on Skid Row.
Sure.
Yeah.
Homeless
Because
on Skid Row.
we know you're on the spiral down. Now we want to pick up when you're way down.
Cool.
We'll be back in 2 minutes. Stay with us as Del and Debbie's Mind, Body, and Soul. We'll be back in 2.
We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Marsha Waiteka, inviting you to join me every Monday at 1 p.m. for Born to Talk, where conversation plus connections equal community. Be sure to tune in to Born to Talk with Marsha Waiteka, Mondays at 1 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on latalklive.com. You can also listen live at iTunes Radio R&B, TuneIn Radio, Radio Flag, Live 365, or AHA Radio. This is Reality Radio, handcrafted for your listening and viewing pleasure. We are LA Talk Live, and we are born to talk.
Hi, I'm Del Lady Jones, and I'm a certified relationship and divorce coach.
And I'm Debbie Carlin Boyle, a certified personal trainer, fitness instructor, and health coach.
Join us on Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Pacific, for Del and Debbie's Mind, Body, Soul, and everything in between, exclusively on LA Talk Live.
Become part of the conversation with expert guests discussing life-changing topics such as relationships, divorce, longevity, parenting challenges, dating, intimacy, and so much more.
We would love to hear your opinions and questions, either on our Facebook page or by calling us directly at 323-473-3100. We are Del and Debbie's Mind, Body, Soul, and everything in between. Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Pacific on latalklive.com.
You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, R&B, and now live on Facebook, or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. And now on our YouTube channel, Del and Debbie Mind, Body, Soul. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening and viewing pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, and welcome back. We are Del and Debbie's Mind, Body, Soul, and everything in between. And we have the wonderful, inspirational Khalil Rafati here. And we're going to pick up where we left off, which is you are living in Skid Row, homeless.
Yes.
So let's take it from there.
Yeah. So that
was part of your spiral. You went right down to Skid Row.
Well, the honeymoon period is about 3 years, and then bam, all of a sudden, I sort of came to muttering to myself, walking down San Julian, and it was like 116 degrees outside. I had a long mock turtleneck sweater on because you didn't want the cops to see your track marks because they could, pull you over. They could arrest you. Yeah. And I'm like, whoa, what happened? I mean, it literally happened like that. It was almost, I've never been hijacked before, but that's such a, the terrorism and everything that's going on these days. I often think about that. Like, it literally was like being hijacked. Like, I'm cruising along, I'm hanging out with these rock stars, I'm dating these, B and C list actresses and model waitresses and all of us.
Victoria's Secret models.
No,
What was
she
the
wasn't
one?
quite Victoria's Secret model, but she was a pretty big model.
I heard about the wings somewhere. What
Oh,
was that? You
yeah.
managed to get your hands on.
I did.
Oh, the Victoria's Secret wings.
Wings.
Well, so you guys would have had to
Okay.
read the book.
Yeah, there
know
was
what
some
you're-
there were some models in there, but anyway, I all of a sudden it's like, okay, everything's gone. Everything. Car's gone, girl's gone, no bank account, no nothing. Again, being industrious and being a worker, went and got on welfare, went and got on food stamps, got my hotel vouchers, got my bus tokens, and began my new life as a street urchin, as a homeless junkie living on Skid Row, and it was awful.
And how long did that last?
Total homelessness, about 20 months.
20 months.
Yeah.
And how did you reverse that and work your way off the streets?
I didn't reverse it. It just got worse and worse. I mean, there was multiple overdoses. I got arrested a bunch. I spent a good chunk of time in a county jail in the Twin Towers in downtown LA, and I had been incarcerated and locked up quite a few times before, but
And how old were you now? What year was this?
that was was 30, so that was the year 2000, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah,
All right.
year 2000. Yeah, so 2000, 2001 is when the wheels came off.
16, 17
And
years ago.
yeah, 2001, awful, post 9/11, just really, it was terrible. And I was not just strung out on heroin and crack, but completely out of my mind, mentally ill. Acute psychosis had set in. I thought that thought the government was after me. I thought everyone was after me. I had scabies. I had ringworm. My teeth were falling out of my head. When I finally went into rehab, I was 109 pounds.
Oy.
Yeah. I'm 161 pounds right now.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You were emaciated.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about you being. It was in county jail that you had your final.
I wish.
Okay.
I
yeah.
wish. No, my
was the-
final using was actually a cocaine overdose where I just literally crawled into a ditch and rotted into the hillside, and in the process of laying there with the cops everywhere searching for me and bugs and slugs crawling in and out of my ears and my nose, and I couldn't move because I didn't want the leaves to rustle and I didn't want the cops to find me. In the process of laying there and literally rotting into the dirt, into the leaves, I just started to pray, and I'm just like, look, whatever you are, please, I need help. Like, just, I want to be able to see again because my vision had gone, and I want to be able to walk again. My legs weren't working.
Oh my
I had a
goodness.
real severe seizure. And I prayed for hours and hours. I laid there just rotting in those leaves, and eventually the sirens and the footsteps and the flashlights, like I could kind of see, even with your eyes closed.
Why were the police after you? Was this?
Well, I couldn't wait to get back to my little shack. There was a shack that I would go to sometimes with no running water and electricity, but it was safe. It was up on Winding Way West.
Mm-hmm.
So from time to time, I would go up there and I would crash for a few days where I could just feel safe. And then the people that lived in the main house would let me come and shower. In fact, who was the son that was with Emily Shane?
Oliver, but my
Her
son.
son.
Okay,
Oliver,
so Oliver was
and-
friends with the Ruffmans.
Yes.
And
So the Ruffmans let me stay at
okay.
their house, stay on their
Okay.
property in their shack.
Yeah.
So I got a bunch of stuff and was supposed to go back to the shack and use it, but I couldn't wait. So I sat down in front of one of those big palaces on Winding Way West, and I went to shoot up, and I didn't realize, but there was cameras everywhere, so they called the cops.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my last shot.
You know what?
Who's
Thank
they?
God. Thank
They-
God.
The Ruffmans?
No,
Who's
whoever
they?
owned that
Yeah.
that,
Oh, okay.
that place.
But,
Okay.
I mean, think about it. Thank God that they did.
Sure. Yeah, because if I would have made it back to the shack, I probably would be dead right
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
So that was it. And then I reached out to Bob Forrest, who worked for a charity called Musicians Assistance Program, or in my case, Failed Musician Assistance Program. And they paid for me to go to Pasadena Recovery Center, and they paid for me to go to New Perceptions. So they paid for 90 days of treatment, and they also gave me, once I was in a halfway house, they gave me $40 a day to live on, to buy my cigarettes and get my coffee. And
Now, this wasn't your first time in rehab. This is...
this was my second time technically. My first time was when my ex-girlfriend, Jennifer's father from the book, when he stuck us in Spencer Recovery Center down in Orange County. So my first technical time in rehab was in the year 2000, but I lasted until they stopped giving me medication, and then I jumped out of the second-story window. So I didn't really go through rehab.
You weren't ready.
I went into
You
rehab and then out the window.
didn't want to be there. You were there for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
This time you asked for intervention.
This time,
and
yeah.
You prayed and you wanted to make. You
Yeah.
didn't- You literally hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
I mean, you literally hit the rocks on the bottom.
Yeah.
So how...
My goodness.
How did you... So you were in a sober living place.
Yes.
And how did that go? I know that you ended up founding your own sober living place, the Riviera Recovery.
I did. Yeah.
Was that right on the tail of you being in sober
God,
living?
No. I was penniless, absolutely
Oh.
penniless and homeless. My mother was living below the level of poverty. My father wasn't speaking to me at that time, which was not uncommon. I had burned.
Or were they still back in Ohio at
Yes.
this time? They
Yeah,
were.
yeah.
Okay.
And apart,
Not together.
No, they divorced in 1976, 1977.
okay.
So there was no family to turn to. There was nothing. There was, my plans when I was in Pasadena Recovery Center before going to the halfway house, I asked Mike Bloom that owned the place and Dr. Bloom, his dad, I asked them if I could be a janitor in exchange for room and board. And they just laughed. And I'm like, no, please. And they're like, no. I mean, they just wanted me. I took up a lot of space. They wanted me to, they're wonderful people. Dr. Bloom, unfortunately, has died. Mike Bloom is a good friend of mine today. But I was very, the psychosis did not go away at first. It took about 18 months for my brain to rewire itself. I still was...
That's a short period of time, actually.
Yeah, I was acutely paranoid for... about a year and a half. I still thought that there were, aliens in the government and all these people were coming to get me. And my rationalizations are amazing when I think back, because when people would say, how do you know? I'm like, well, I can see the American flags on the back of all of their cars, That I literally thought, the people that had American flags on the back of their cars were part of this government agency conspiracy that was coming to get me. Until in my sobriety, somebody said, you remember that little thing that happened called 9/11? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, people are putting flags on the back of their car to show support and solidarity for those fallen men and women. And I'm like,
but your brain wasn't functioning on full capacity.
I was shooting
Yeah.
3, 4, 5 grams of
You had to
coke a
clean
day.
up.
And heroin.
And heroin, out of my tree.
And lucky to be alive.
Yeah.
With that kind of
So
frame.
I just wanted to make sure we stay on track here
Yes.
because we want to get to the to the happy ending.
Yes.
So how did you get the funds or the ability to have your first?
I'll go real quickly. So Sherman, that owns Sherman's Place.
Yeah, I love Sherman.
Yeah,
me-
that's how I got my dog.
Yeah, gave me
I
a job
rescued my
washing
dog.
dogs. Lou Gossett Jr. saw me in there washing dogs and offered me a job walking and feeding his dogs. Did not know who he was, but I went to work for him. Malibu Beach Recovery, which is no longer around, gave me a job working. Do you guys know Deanette? Deanette
Oh,
Wells?
yeah, very well.
Yes, very well.
So Deanette felt sorry for me because she
Yeah.
knew Sherman and she loves animals, so she
Yes.
hired me to be an overnight guy. Pietra Thornton hired me
Yes.
to be a manny for her 2 boys and take them boogie boarding. Cindy Landon hired me to be her assistant. She's the greatest.
I love
Yeah,
Cindy.
she is. Cindy was just an angel and a saint and
She
a
is.
sister, and she felt so bad for me, and she just, because I was 35 years old,
Yeah.
a convicted felon, a high school dropout, just a loser, and I had nothing going for me, and she was so generous with me and so loving, and so I took all of that money and I put every penny of it into gold and silver, physical gold and silver. I was driving to Inglewood, right over here, to California Numismatics Metals, and I was buying these old coins, not because I was smart, because
I was just going to say, how did you know to do that?
I didn't have a bank account. I couldn't get a bank account because I'd written so many bad checks to Ralph's. Okay. Sorry, Ralph's. 15 years ago, you could write a check for $300 and buy a pack of cigarettes, and they would give you the cash back. True story. Yeah, I drove to. I know every Ralph's within 150 miles of here.
Wow, you are so resourceful.
Yes.
And then, so how did you know about the gold and silver? How did you know?
I had a sponsee named Peter who told me that gold and silver was going to go up, and gold and silver didn't just go up. It went. They went
totally
parabolic.
Right. Yeah,
exactly.
They went parabolic. Yes. So in 2007, I opened up Riviera Recovery on a shoestring and a prayer. I convinced this woman who was letting me live in her house to let me rent her house from her. And I said, I'll give you $10,000 a month, but I need 3 months free rent up front. And so she was like, fine. She had a house in Venice anyway and didn't want to stay there. So she moved out, and I called Passages, I called Promise, I called everybody, and I'm like, I have a sober living. I was the second sober living in Malibu. So I opened my doors, and the beds just filled up.
Yeah.
Yes.
And people were paying $10,000 per head.
And
I know about
where
that.
You made your famous drink.
That is where I started making the smoothies, and that's where I developed the Wolverine, which was the first smoothie.
Is that how it all came about?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Wait, do you still
the
have a
Wolverine.
sober living in Malibu?
I don't have a sober living. I work very closely with Jose, who I sold Riviera Recovery to in 2012. And then I also work very closely with Aloe House. Are you guys familiar with Aloe
Well,
House?
it's at Malibu Gym now.
Yes.
They moved. Yeah. And so I'm below at Malibu. I'm a trainer at the gym, so they're right above us.
They're outpatient in their corporate offices above Malibu Gym. So I work with Evan and Jared pretty regularly. I teach classes up there, and I refer a lot of people there.
Okay.
I'm there.
That's great. And 'cause I work for Richard Tate. I work at Cliffside Malibu.
Yeah, I love Richard.
Yes, Richard is
Richard is
Richard, right?
Richard and Khalil have very many similarities, except he's really rich and successful, and I'm on my way.
You're on your way.
Yeah,
yes,
no, you're very successful.
We have to get to
So sold Riviera in 2000 and Riviera Recovery in 2012 to Jose Hernandez, and continue to work closely with them and be a part of the legacy and go there for the meetings and stuff. But I started a little juice bar called Sun Life Organics in 2011.
Just a little one.
And it was a little mom and pop
That
shop.
was 2011. Okay.
Yeah, and again started it on a shoestring and a prayer.
So industrious though.
It was just from the moment the doors opened. It was
so needed,
Yeah.
It really. I mean, well, we have Vitamin Barn, and we had PC Greens,
but
it was different. It wasn't.
We needed a living room. We needed a living room,
and on that end of town, number one.
Yeah. So I created a living room, and I put in the crystals, and I did all the stuff that would make me comfortable, and it just turns out that it made everybody else comfortable too, and everyone started coming there, and then really the movie stars, I guess you'll call them, the movie stars and the rock stars who lived in the neighborhood, who were so kind to support us and stand around for 40 minutes waiting for their juices and their smoothies.
Well, wait a minute. They're freshly made juices,
Freshly made.
That's why there was a little bit of a line in the beginning.
We just didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
We had no idea what we were doing. And
you had volume. You had people coming.
Hundreds and hundreds of people a day.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I was one of them.
But what ended up happening was those amazing people that lived on Point Doom who were so kind and so patient. And then, some of the beach people and the little high school girls started coming in. And then this whole Instagram thing came about. And now all of a sudden, I've got 15-year-old girls building my business because they would come in, they would take a picture of their acai bowl, and then they would send it out to hundreds or thousands of people.
Wow.
And then the next day, the line got bigger. And then all of a sudden, there was a little girl who was living on Point Doom. She was on a really big television show that was on MTV at the time, and going to USC and maintaining a 4.0, came to me and said, I want a job. And I'm like, you're on a television show. You're famous. And she's like, I want to stay busy. I'm like, great. So I gave her a job. and she started posting about us. She started taking pictures of our products and sending it out to
she
all
had a
of
lot
her
of
fans.
followers,
A lot
and
of followers.
that's the way
So
it
now all of a
works,
sudden,
yeah.
people from the Inland Empire, from Pasadena, from all over the place
And
started
then they
coming
start
in.
sending it,
Yeah.
and that's what's networking.
So now there's 6 locations. We're building
Name
our,
all your locations.
Westlake, Calabasas, Pasadena, Manhattan Beach, and 2 in Malibu. And then the 7th one, which we just started building today, is on campus at USC.
It's gonna
just
be
for her.
amazing. Yeah.
She graduated now.
For her and a few
really.
other
Wait,
people.
where's the
Thousands
second
of others.
location in Malibu? Why?
Cross
Cross
Creek.
Creek.
Oh, of course. Okay.
The
all
old
right.
Howdies.
All right.
Yeah.
Right. The old
So
Howdies. I
it
totally
took
forgot.
it took off like gangbusters. We had no idea what we were doing. We literally failed our way to success.
Good. That's the way it works.
But there was just such. I mean, I'm a very visual. I'm a painter as well, so I am very visual. It's a stunning store.
Thank you.
And the quality and yes, there was a line. There was a very long line in the
Very
beginning.
long line.
But it seems to have got a lot faster. It's much more efficient
Well, they're
now.
more efficient.
It has.
You learn.
I
But
mean-
it's just beautiful. And I
Thank you.
love how you have those. You have a bookshelf there where you sell books for some of the local authors that come in. And
Well,
you
tell
can
our
name it.
listeners, what you do, because we can visually, we've
Yeah.
been there. But
Sure.
tell them what you sell, what your menu is, because your menu has grown over the years, too.
The menu's the menu's
So-
huge, and so basically the difference between us is since we didn't know what we were doing, we decided to take 100% certified organic everything. You know, I love the other people out there that were doing what they did, and thank God they were there for me when I needed my smoothies and my juices. But we made a decision in the very beginning with Fred Siegel. Fred Siegel was mentoring me at the time that we were only going to use 100% certified organic produce, and
That made you a standout.
well, it made us a standout. It also made us lose money for years and years. And every time money came in, we would just open up another store. And again, we had no idea what we were doing.
That's what you do in the
But
beginning.
that's it.
We didn't
Building,
care.
yeah.
We didn't open it to make money. I was
Yeah.
already making money with Riviera Recovery. And after buying my mom a house, I went back to Ohio and bought my mom a house. Thank you. But after that was done, I was kind of like, I'm cool. I could go like wait tables and be fine. Like, you know what I mean? Literally, I could go
Yeah.
wait tables right now and be fine. I'm pretty good at it. But I had to know my mom was taken care of. So I set up an annuity for her and I got her the house. And my mom, for the rest of her life, is super comfortable and spoiled. and
God.
that's all that matters.
Yeah.
That's
So
I'm going to cry.
I know.
Sorry, I'm just
Can you talk to my kids?
really a little teary-eyed here. That's so gorgeous. Such a
there's
great
nothing
story.
more honorable than loving and taking care of your mother.
Absolutely.
Regardless of what type of a mother she was, it doesn't matter. She did the best she could.
Exactly.
My
Nobody
dad-
wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be a lousy parent.
Nope.
I mean, truly, and I love what you say too about we don't know the battles somebody else is going through. We don't know, the demons they deal with, and most people are truly doing the best they can, even if it's
Everybody is
with
fighting
their-
a fierce battle.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
They're doing
Everybody.
what they know the best
Yeah.
they know how.
So, I also want to know how, because I'm well as loving your juices and everything else that you have at
You have food too.
Yes,
I
you have
mean your
great food.
salads and
But
sandwiches. And
upstairs is my second home, the place where I am truly my happiest when I'm not with my kids, and that is the yoga studio. Now, how did you
Same thing.
Malibu Beach Yoga?
Yeah, Malibu Beach Yoga came about the exact same way that Sun Life Organics did. I wanted a juice bar that had everything that was organic. I wanted organic frozen yogurt, which I couldn't find anywhere. I wanted organic coffee. I'm thinking, I live in Malibu and I can't get organic coffee. How is that possible? So I created Sun Life Organics. Haley and I created Sun Life Organics. And by the way, the real owner of Sun Life Organics is Haley Gorsey. I'm the face. I was the idea guy. I convinced some professional gambler to cut us a check for a couple $100,000 to open it.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
but
amazing.
but Haley is the one that took my vision and my dreams and made it what it is today. And she did the same with Riviera Recovery, and she also helped me with Malibu Beach Yoga. So Malibu Beach Yoga, I didn't want to drive to Santa Monica every day. I didn't want to spend 5 hours of my day sitting in traffic, finding a parking space, doing an hour and a half yoga class, finding a juice or a drink afterwards that was mediocre, getting back in my car, sitting in traffic. So I was like, I'll just open up a yoga studio. Had no idea what I was doing. And it was an absolute disaster at first, but everyone just showed up. And there would be days when a teacher wouldn't show up and literally a student would teach the class. There were days where we couldn't get the door open and people were
I've
just
been there
laughing.
some of those days.
Yeah, no.
Helping yourself through the window.
Yes, and people just they loved us up and they
It was
supported
so
us.
needed, and it's the most, as I was saying earlier, it's the most stunning, beautiful, comforting, inviting space. There are no mirrors. It's not for people that want to show off. It's not
No.
it's the most zen experience. You just go in there, and to me, it's my church. I say, and
Well, my favorite artist is a street artist named Cryptic. He's like one of those guys you can never see his face or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Like
and
Banksy.
I very obsessively tracked him down and convinced him to do that mural of Ganesh.
the Ganesh. Oh, my
yeah, and
goodness.
it took him literally 10 days, and he did it by hand. Most people don't know that.
Wow,
So
I never knew
so like an idiot, I spent like 15 grand painting a mural, and I thought, okay, I got a mural. I'll put in a really expensive. I think it's called a sprung.
Sprung floor.
Yeah,
exactly.
sprung floor
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
exercise.
And then buy a bunch of really amazing crystals.
Oh my God.
And then people will like it, and they did.
Yes.
And
of course
and
they
it,
did.
And it's thriving now.
That's the mural. I haven't been in the studio, but that's the mural that Mona takes all her pictures
Pictures
in front of.
against,
Okay,
yes.
that's amazing mural.
Thank
At
you.
first, I was like, "Wow, where's she finding that?" And then I realized it's the
It's
studio.
the studio.
Yeah, it's
I am parked
amazing.
right. I love it, against the back wall. My place is right next to the black, the onyx black. Is
Yeah.
it the black onyx crystal?
Oh, the smoky quartz. I love that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, your crystals are
Thank you.
beyond anything I've ever seen in life.
Thank you.
They really
I've
are.
been to Brazil. I've been all over the place. I have relationships with miners that bring them out of the ground and then send me a video or a picture, and then I buy them
Wow.
over. I buy them on my phone,
They're
basically.
that organic.
Oh
Wow.
yeah, and
Wow.
then they ship them here in a container, or sometimes
I mean,
they
they
even
just
fly
to
them.
give you. I mean, they. How tall are they? They're
Some of them are 5 feet.
5 feet,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, just
So-
I've never seen anything so amazing.
Opened up Malibu Beach Yoga, and that ended up doing really well. And then, for about 10 years, I kept hearing people say, "You should write a book. You should write a book. You should write." And after a while, at first it was flattering, but then it became irritating because it's like, I'm not an author. I'm not Albert
But
Camus
you have a
or
story.
or
you have an
Hemingway.
amazing story that can help other people.
I have an amazing story, but I had a really loud voice that was louder than anything that told me on a daily basis, "You're a piece of shit, you're a loser, nobody cares about you, all of the success is going to disappear tomorrow, Haley's going to leave you, life has passed you by." That voice that somehow convinced me that it was my spiritual advisor. And I listened,
Yeah.
to that voice
Yeah.
for 10 years, telling me every day, no one's going to read your stupid book. No one cares about your stupid story. And I would fight it. I would buy like The Artist's Way, or
Yeah.
I would buy The War of Art.
Yes,
Have you guys ever
I
read this?
love
Yeah,
that.
I know
And-
the artist's way.
And The
And
War of
The
Art.
War of Art is amazing.
Brilliant. And his other book was that he wrote too.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, I can't think of it. But anyway,
so I would
amazing.
go buy the journals, and I would write the first 3 or 4 pages, and then I would tear them out, and then I would throw the journal out, and then over and over again, 25 journals, 50. I'm trying not to exaggerate. 75 self-help books, and after about a year and a half ago, I was at a barbecue. I got invited to this really fancy barbecue with a bunch of really famous people, and I was feeling very small. And I was sitting at a table, and this guy came and sat next to me, and super nice guy started talking to me. He said, "Oh, you should write a book." I'm like, "Yeah, I've heard that a million times." And he's like, "So then write it." And I'm like, "It's not that easy." And he's like, "Yes, it
Exactly.
is." And I'm like, "No, it's not actually." And he's like, "Yes, it is." And I'm like, "Look, man, I've tried." And he goes, "Well, so have I, and I've written 16 books, and you just have to get up and find a time during the day and write.
Piece
and,
by
and-
piece,
And
little
write
bit by
and
little
write
bit.
and write for 20 minutes. That's it." I'm like, "That's it?" And he's like, "Yeah." He knew what he was doing. I
Yeah.
mean, he lit a fire underneath me, and he gave me his email. He didn't give me his number. That's the new thing. Here's my email. So he gave me his email, and I went home and I Googled him, and I owned 5 of his books.
Who was it?
Neil Strauss.
Oh,
Yeah.
goodness.
Wow.
So I was like, "Oh my God!" And just Neil believing in me and Neil encouraging me.
Got rid of that voice.
It did. It did.
It turned the voice around.
Yeah.
It said you can do it.
It did.
You're not a
and
piece
you
of
need
shit.
to do it. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I just have to share with you. I don't want to run out of time here, but I mean, my son, the one I was saying earlier that has struggled with depression, and he read your book, and he even the other day we were texting, and he quoted something out of your book as Khalil says, and I was like, oh my God, we're going to have him on the show, and he goes, tell him I love him and thank you so much, and his book really helped me.
Wow. Well,
so
when did the book come out?
the book came out 15 months ago.
And you were on a national show. I saw you interviewed. I saw a whole package on you.
Yeah.
What was it? CBS when the
I was
book
on
came out.
CBS Morning
Show. That's
not
it.
not when it came out. No, I self-published it.
It was
Nobody knew about my book.
Okay. Wait.
Lion's Crest is they just print books for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just get it and then you
I
have
paid
to
them.
figure
They
out
made a
how
bunch
to-
of books. I put it on Amazon, and then David Duchovny tweeted about it, and
There
then,
you go.
And then Pamela Anderson Facebooked about it, and then Kelly Slater did an Instagram post. And when Kelly Slater did the Instagram post, it went viral and started selling all over the world.
Oh my
Oh my
gosh!
goodness.
And
Well-
you, where you're meant to be. I love
Yes.
Thank you.
this. You are
So
one hell of an
we
inspirational
have just
guy.
a couple of minutes here, so I know. I mean, there are so many words of wisdom that you share on your website and your book. But just give our audience a great word of wisdom before you leave, and also just your website.
Yeah,
so
and the
people
name
can-
of the book. So
Yes.
they
Oh yeah,
can-
the name of the book is "I Forgot to Die" by Khalil Rafati. It's available on Amazon and Kindle. It's also available at sunlifeorganics.com. You can find me at Khalil Rafati, just the well, on Instagram. If you go to at Khalil Rafati. I don't do Facebook. I'm private on Facebook, and I don't know how to vet people, so please don't send me a request on that. But please follow me on Instagram. My advice for anybody out there that is going through anything that is painful or uncomfortable or not serving your soul anymore is that you can change. I promise you can change, no matter
Never too
how.
late.
Yeah, no matter what you're going through. Please read my book and understand that if an idiot like me can change and have this incredibly huge, amazing life, you can change too.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well,
Thank
so
you.
true.
Yes,
thank
so
you
thank
for
you so
helping
much.
for all you've done,
My pleasure.
helping everybody.
And you are anything but an idiot. You're an inspirational,
you.
incredible,
And such a
incredible
pleasure to
human
have you.
being.
And anytime anything new in your life happens or a new business, come back and
I
tell
will.
us all about it, will
will.
you?
I know.
Okay, because we love having you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. We're going to see you next week, right back here at 2 p.m. live. Del and Debbie's Mind, Body, and Soul. Bye now.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.